Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of NCompass Live. I am your host, Krista Porter, here at the Nebraska Library Commission. NCompass Live is the Commission's weekly webinar series where we cover a variety of topics that may be of interest to libraries. We broadcast the show live every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time. But if you're unable to join us on Wednesdays, that's fine. We do record the show as we are doing today, and it will be available for you to watch later at your convenience in our show archives. And I'll show you at the end of today's show where you can access all of the show archives. Both the live show and the recordings are free and open to anyone to watch. So please do share with your friends, family, neighbors, colleagues, anyone you think might be interested in any of the shows we have on NCompass Live. For those of you possibly not from Nebraska watching our show or recordings, the Nebraska Library Commission is the state library for Nebraska. So similar to other states where it's so-and-so state library, in Nebraska, we're a library commission. So we are a section of the state government. And we provide training and resources and databases and grants and support and consulting to all types of libraries in the state. So you will find shows on NCompass Live for all types of libraries: public, academic, K-12, corrections, museums, historical societies, archives, on and on. Really, our only criteria is that it's something to do with libraries. We have shows on NCompass Live sometimes that are from Library Commission staff promoting and talking about services and programs and resources we have here. But we also bring in guest speakers, and that is what we have today. Today we're going to be learning about civic engagement for Nebraska Public Libraries. And I'm very excited to have a wonderful group of people here with me this morning. We have, and I'll let you each do a little intro for yourself if you want to, go into more detail about, as we're going through the show about how you got involved in this. But Fiona Bryant, good morning, Fiona. She's going to be our main guide through this civic engagement this morning, and she is, as she put on the slides here, just on Monday, 2 days ago, was received the award for Nebraska Library Association Outstanding Volunteer. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that was at volunteering at the Omaha Public Library, correct?
Yeah, it was for my volunteer work at the Omaha Public Library and my school library, and then also for this project.
Nice, nice. And this is a project that Fiona did as part of her Girl Scout Gold Award service project with various organizations and people we have from those organizations here. With us today is Bethany Barelman from Omaha Public Library, Mike Forsythe from Civic Nebraska, and Jan McKenzie from the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. And they are all going to be helping us go through this guide as well this morning. So Fiona, I think I will just hand over to you to tell us all about what you did here.
Thank you. Yeah. So this is kind of our background information. We're going to have like a short slideshow, and then we're going to go through and see, like, if I were a library, what could I get from this guide? So first, I'll talk a little bit about the volunteering I've done with OPL. Like Krista said, I did just earn that award on Monday. It was super exciting. And I've been shelving at OPL since 2023, and then I worked with them on this project. And so shelving really was able to let me meet all these people like Bethany and learn more about kind of how the library helps the community and has a role in the community. And I learned a lot about shelving too. And then for the Girl Scouts part of it, I've been a Girl Scout since 2013. So since kindergarten, I've done kind of the full 12 years. And then I earned my Girl Scout Gold Award for this project, which, if you know anything about Boy Scouts, it's like the equivalent of the Eagle Scout. And so for that, my project had to be 80 hours and have a sustainable impact, kind of like when I was done with the project, how to keep being continued. And I also had to go through a proposal and final review process. And then for how I chose the project, I mean, I spend a lot of time at the library, and even I didn't know kind of all the resources that a public library would have to help with the elections. And so I started this project last September, October, right before the 2024 election. And so I got to kind of incorporate how much I love libraries and love civic engagement and bring that together to make it so libraries' civic engagement programming stronger. Um, and yeah, I noticed that maybe like the ALA, the American Library Association, had some resources and there were some Nebraska resources, but there wasn't a specific guide for Nebraska public libraries with Nebraska specific political information and then specific programming ideas. Also with that too was last year was the first election where the voter ID law kind of came into play, and there's a lot of
Right.
confusion with that and voter suppression with that too. So I hoped that my project would kind of provide information to fix that problem a little bit at least. And then I worked with the League of Women Voters of Nebraska and Greater Omaha and then Civic Nebraska, and they can kind of get into their roles in the project as well. But I chose them for the civic engagement background that they could bring, and then also a lot of the people I ended up sending it out to. They were organizations that League of Women Voters or Civic Nebraska had worked with before. And then the first kind of phase of my project, I worked with OPL to help get their election resources out before that 2024 election. So I wrote social media posts, which then they were able to put out. And then I wrote this blog post that had a lot of information specifically for Douglas County. And then I put out surveys of librarians to see what information do you need? What would be helpful for you when you're helping patrons before the election? And so that helped a lot with writing the eventual guide, like the guide that I put out that we'll go over in a second, because I knew what librarians wanted help with. And then I also wrote kind of a version of that guide that was specific to the Omaha Public Library, just to thank them for helping me with this first part of the project. And in the first part of the project, there were over 1,000 views on the social media posts I wrote, and then 200 people viewed the blog post. So that kind of helped me a lot with understanding like how you would put out civic engagement outreach or programming. And so then I was able to take what I learned and put that into the guide. And then as for distribution, like who's gotten this guide, I sent it to 15 civic groups in Nebraska. Um, Also, like this Civic Nebraska, League of Women Voters of Nebraska, and League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha have access to it because they helped me with it, obviously. And I kind of used people they've worked with before and sent it out to them. And then if you are on the Nebraska Library Commission's email list, you probably got a copy of it. Um, I'm going to be on the OPO's like social media for my work as a volunteer, so it'll be distributed that way. Um, the Nebraska Library Association put it on their website, I believe. And then, of course, this show.
Mhm. And we have a link to it on our Library Commission website now too. We have
Yes.
Nebraska Access is databases and websites and resources that are curated by librarians at the Library Commission. And we have an elections page that has lots of resources for Nebraska people. And there's a link now to it there as well.
And we can go through how to find that too if someone wants that as well,
Yeah.
because I have that pulled up. So if someone's like, how do I get to it from the Nebraska Access page, we can do that. And then that's kind of the background information about how I chose this project and got into creating the guide. Does anyone have any questions right now?
Let's see here. Oh, we got some more people joining too. Hello, hello. Yeah, does anybody have any questions you want to ask right now of Fiona about what she did, her project, um, the guide? So you have a comment. Someone says you seem to be very interested in the library. Is that something you're thinking of as a career, or is this just a cool thing to be involved in?
I would like to be a public librarian as kind of my career, so that's why I'm really
Yay!
interested.
Yay! We need more. Awesome. Become one of us. We love it. Yes. All right. I don't see anything else right now, but yeah, anybody has any questions as we're going through? I know a few people joined since I did my little blurb at the beginning. Just type into that questions section, and I'm keeping an eye on that, and I'll grab any of your questions and comments for the group.
And maybe this could be a good time for Mike and Jan to go through too, if they wanted to talk about kind of their organization's role in it, or we could do that after the guide.
Sure, we can do that right
Sure.
now. Yeah, whichever one wants to go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, my name is Mike Forsythe. I am a community organizer with Civic Nebraska, and I've been with the organization for 6 years. And Civic Nebraska is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and we promote civic engagement throughout the state of Nebraska. We have three program areas. We have our youth civic leadership program, where we're trying to reach uh, elementary through high school students and create lifelong voters, civic leaders, and just uh, show kids and teach kids at a young age the value of being a good citizen, what that looks like, and just trying to create lifelong voters. Um, Then we also have our civic health program, where we have a team of organizers that work primarily in communities in Lincoln, trying to help those communities and the people that live in the neighborhoods identify uh, the things that they would like to change, and then connect them to the proper institutions to try and bring about positive changes in the neighborhoods and communities where they live. And then voting rights, which I've been working with Civic Nebraska on team voting rights for almost 6 years, as I said. And uh, we while we don't endorse candidates or political parties in any way, shape, or form, we work really hard on get out the vote initiatives, GOTV, and the education piece is really key to and at the forefront of everything that we do. And that's why when Fiona approached, I think I got the email, the initial one from Fiona, maybe a day or so after the general election, which was pretty cool. Uh, and the the things that she'd already been doing um, with the libraries in Omaha and the surrounding areas was really impressive. And when she came to us with the idea for this project, I'm like, hey, this is right in our wheelhouse, making sure that people have accurate and factual information, and lots of it. This guide is really comprehensive, and it. I think Fiona did a really good job of covering covering things. There's even, I think there's a page in there that explains how to contact your state senator. So um, it's been awesome. After I took an initial look at this guide after Fiona completed it, I was maybe a little bit envious that I didn't think of it myself, but that's okay. It's very well done in my opinion, and something that I'm proud to have Civic Nebraska play a small part in it. And really, what we did, we just provided Fiona with a list of um, a list of resources, that we use, like the Douglas County Election Commission's website, the Secretary of State's website, and really just pointed her in the direction in that direction, and she did virtually all the heavy lifting. I did bring in Civic Nebraska's communications specialist, Tanner Cano, and he did a really nice job, I think, of uh, plugging in the graphics and everything like that that you'll see to make the information a little more palatable fun, nice to look at. So that was basically our role, and I'm gonna I'm gonna stop talking now. I don't want anybody to feel like I'm talking at them, and I'll pass it over to Bethany or Jan.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Jan McKenzie, and I am president of the League of Women Voters Greater Omaha. Also working hand in hand with League of Women Voters Nebraska. So first want to just say thanks to Fiona for engaging in this great opportunity to promote civic engagement and helping the libraries to continue to expand their resources for individuals looking for voter information. Certainly the league, and I love the fact too that this came about as part of a partnership we have with the library, and we learned about this opportunity, and Fiona then reached out to our league, Greater Omaha, and it just was obviously certainly a natural fit. We're all about voter education, and so to see this come to life of putting all these documents and information together as a single resource that could be used initially with Omaha and Douglas County, because we have some uniqueness about us, but also then to see the growth, to use that and to have a guide that's for Nebraska is important too. So these are great resources that we hope that we'll continue to build from as things evolve and change and more information becomes available. It's a great starting point. We will have it on our website for League of Women Voters Greater Omaha. And our organization, very similar to Civic Nebraska, we are nonpartisan, a 501c3 public charity. And so our whole focus and goals is around voter education. One of the couple big things that we do are voter registration events and activities, and with that then provide materials and information to help people create a voting plan. We put out the voter's guide for local elections. So the city of Omaha has elections currently going on, and so we have a voter's guide that is out for that. We also do them for all the election seasons, as well as having the printed guide. We have Vote 411, which is an online resource that can be captured on your phone, on your computer. And in there, you can double check your voter registration. It will link you to the state voter registration page. But more importantly, you can pull in your address, and you can see all the candidates who have responded as part of the voter guide outreach, and see some demographic information, as well as their responses to questions, and hopefully all of the candidates have responded. And we make that live, and it's available. Again, it's a nonpartisan tool and resource for individuals to utilize for voting. So our focus around League of Women Voters is really around that voter education. So this really aligns with hand in hand to what we do. And so we are very thankful to be in partnership with Omaha Public Library and Fiona and her project, as well as we just want to say congratulations to Fiona on not only her gold star, but also her recent volunteer recognition from the Nebraska Library Commission.
Nebraska Library Association, actually.
Association, my apologies.
Yeah, it was Library Advocacy Day on Monday here in Lincoln. So librarians coming to the Capitol to talk to their people in the legislature about supporting libraries. And then we also do the awards ceremony. NLA, it's an NLA thing, Nebraska Library Association. And they also do their awards ceremonies for various volunteer awards. And that's when Fiona got that. Yeah.
Another way to get involved as citizens is visiting the state capitol and participating with your legislators.
Yeah, it's open. Anybody who wants to help out. That was an annual thing, Library Advocacy Day. So look for it again next March sometime. Date to be determined. We do have a question about the league. You're in the Greater Omaha area. There are other ones in other parts of the state that would have their local information then?
We do. Yeah, so there's, besides Omaha, there's Lincoln, Lancaster, Hastings area, and Seward are all 4 leagues that we have in Nebraska. And then if an individual is somewhere else outside of those areas, you could be a member of the state league as a member at large and participate with the work that we're doing at a state, and potentially then create a chapter if there's enough interest locally. But certainly our state will help support you and guide you as a member of the league.
Nice. Thanks, Jan. Bethany, do you want to talk about your involvement in here?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of repeat information. Libraries are all about getting people connected with reliable information, and we're a trusted institution, so we want to make sure that we're getting trusted information out to people. And also, we really like to be a collaborator in the community by connecting people to other local resources. Jan and I just put out the League of Women Voter Guides yesterday so that people can grab them. So it's great. But I'll be brief because really I think that the guide speaks for itself. Fiona, you did a great job of how important it is for libraries to be involved in this work, and you really lay it out well for like the importance for each section, and you split it up by age. But there's just so much information out there all the time that this guide is a great way for staff of varying experience level with elections, or especially if you're in a rural area where maybe you just have 1 or 2 people trying to do all of the things. It's just the timeline is really great for being like, okay, here's where we're at in this election cycle, and here's the next thing. What can I do to get this information out to people? And that's what we're always trying to do, is just stay on top of getting out the information that our community really wants and needs. So you did a great job.
Thank you.
All right, Fiona, you want to take us through the guide itself then?
Yeah.
Switch over to
Okay,
that.
so here's the Nebraska Public Libraries and Civic Engagement Outreach. I also have the Omaha one open. If you are at a library kind of in Douglas or Sarpy County, this one has a little bit more specific information, like it lists the Douglas County Commission office, whereas this one links just for you to be able to find that information if you're in a different county. So we're going to go through this one. And like we were talking about, right here, like Civic Nebraska, League of Women Voters, and Omaha Public Library are all nonpartisan. So this is a nonpartisan guide. There's not going to be like vote for this in your library or anything. It's a nonpartisan guide for you to be able to put out nonpartisan information, because that is an important part of the library as well. So this is the second page. This is kind of my note that goes over what we talked about in the slideshow, kind of my background with working with the Omaha Public Library and how I chose this project. And then right here is my email. If you ever need, like if you have a question, or maybe like you want more information about something, you can totally email me about it. I answer my email, so there's that. And then here's the table of contents. I've broken it up kind of into different sections based on what you're looking for. So in the overview, here's like, if you only have 10 minutes to look at this guide, here's where I would look, because it has like a suggested timeline for what you can do each month at your library for civic engagement, important dates to know for elections, and then FAQs, kind of if I'm only reading this guide for 10 minutes and I have one question, that's what I would look at. And then also in the table of contents, I want to emphasize all of these are hyperlinked as well. So like if I were to do that, it takes me there. We'll go back up. And then there's also background civic engagement information. So something I noticed when I was helping the Omaha Public Library is sometimes the librarians were new to voting as well and didn't know how this specific part worked. Or also there's been the question of like, is this a guide for patrons? And it totally can be. Like maybe you give this out to patrons or have librarians look at this when they're helping a patron like access voter registration. You can like you guys can use the guide however you want to use it and however helps your library. And then there's also helping patrons. So, I mean, suggested programming kind of goes with that too, but there's how to do social media, how to do book lists and displays, and how to contact a state senator. So that's kind of maybe like we'll get to some that are like super in depth if you want to be super in depth on your civic engagement, but that's like some easy stuff you can do before an election. Suggested programming. So if you want to put a program out about civic engagement, there's different ideas for that. And then that also goes into connecting with community groups and resources. So that's where if you're like, maybe I'm stuck on how to do civic engagement outreach, or I don't have all the resources, or I just want to bring in a community group, we have all the like Nebraska civic organizations, and I think most, if not all, are nonpartisan. So you can bring them in and kind of, there's some prompts with like, what should I bring them in for? Like, how can they help my library and help me with some of this other programming? And then expansion ideas. So that's like if you wanted to do voter registration kiosks at the library, ballot drop boxes, and then there's also just information with helping groups who maybe have hesitancy towards voting or don't always have the information towards voting for whatever reason. So that's more about like voter suppression too. And then for extra resources, here's some of the resources I used from like the American Library Association. And then there's more about how to implement this programming at your library. So we can go through, maybe we're not going to go over like every single page, but kind of see what there is. I'm going to go through it as like if I were a librarian looking for programming suggestions. And then if you have any questions about any of the pages, you can always submit the question and we'll talk about it more. So here's that suggested timeline. Right now we're in March, so you could see like, if we're in March and I want to do some civic engagement stuff at my library, like here's what would be suggested to do. And then here are some of the deadlines coming up for elections. So like right now, like Jan talked about, we have city elections coming up, and then so like city elections for, at least in Omaha, like mayor and city council, and then there's going to be primaries for that. So it tells you like, oh, here's what to look for next month. And there's that for the entire year. Obviously, like we're not going to have a general election every year, but there's still like, what could I be doing this month, you know? And then there's important dates too. So you can kind of look ahead on that, or if a patron's like, when's the last day I can vote or register to vote, then you can look here. And then here are FAQs. I made these after I worked with the Omaha Public Library, kind of seeing what their FAQs were, their frequently asked questions. So all of these are elaborated on more in the guide, but this is just like a quick overview of the answer. It's like, what's the new voter ID law? How would I help a patron register to vote? How do I help them find a polling location? How do they do mail-in voting? And then it will link to where there's kind of that more elaboration in the rest of the guide. Any questions so far?
Let me open the questions part here again. Nope, I don't see anything at the moment. Nothing new.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
I love
here's
that timeline. I would like to say personally, I love that timeline because I know there are things that I miss just personally. So you saying this is good for just patrons. I knew people work in the library. I'm like, oh, I wish I knew what some of those dates were, because you hear about things and sometimes you see it on the news or in the newspaper or social media, but not often enough, I don't think. And people miss things.
Yeah. Especially if it's not like a big presidential election. I mean, those elections are still super important,
Sure.
and that's a great place for libraries to bring in, we'll get to this later, but like bring in a local candidate, because sometimes those smaller races are not, or they're nonpartisan, or like that person lives in the neighborhood because it's a local race. You can bring them into the library. And then this is the background civic engagement information section. So it just has like voting basics, like registering to vote and eligibility. how to fill out a voter registration form, finding a polling location and mail-in voting, voter ID laws, and then kind of like it kind of sections like local politics, Nebraska state politics, and national politics. And then this part right here I think is especially helpful for librarians and library staff because sometimes you don't want to create all these new resources or you don't have a lot of time to do that as well. So here's where you can put out like, oh, we already have these books in our collection and we can just put out a book list that says like here's one that gives information about like one of the big topics during the election. Or I know like even as a patron, just being able to have my Omaha World Herald subscription through the library and kind of read up on the candidates a little bit helps. And then there's also some of the database resources too. So this page tells you, oh, here's how I use what I already have to put that out as civic engagement. And then this is the helping patron section. So here's what I've done on social media. And then there's also more like templates and stuff as well. I know the National Voter Registration Day has a super awesome social media guide that's like already made. You just type in the words pretty much. So
Nice.
there's that to look for. And then like here's an example of one I've done and things that you could promote in that. And then book lists and displays, kind of like what I was talking about earlier with already having those resources. Yeah, just then you can put that out there, maybe do a display on the end cap of the shelves or something. And of course, right here, there's already like all the pamphlets and signs. Because I know at the Omaha Public Library, they'll put out like here's a pamphlet for like voter registration and everything. Sorry, we just had power blip. And then, like Mike was saying, here's how to contact a state senator if that's what a patron needs help with. That can also be a great programming idea, and we'll get into that in a second as well. But there's information for that there too. Yeah, and then we get into the programming. Does anyone have any questions about the last section?
No questions, but just comment that thanks. Just like a great ideas for the different interactions with the library, the patrons. So thank you for that, giving us some tips and guides of how to do a social media post. Some people do that no problem, but some people do have trouble with how should I write it? What should I write? What will catch people's attention best? Yeah.
Thanks. And then for suggested programming, we have like election readiness and voter ID workshops, which is pretty much taking that information from the background civic engagement and making sure your patrons have that. All of these will have like different ideas for what you could do in these programs. And then also this one, I actually found a great example of, there was a library in Pennsylvania that hosted a really good example of that. So you can look at that. And then like we talked about with the local elections, hearing from a local candidate who a lot of times are nonpartisan, I mean, that's a candidate who's directly invested in your community and is probably like a patron of that same library. So there's information for what you could hear about from them. And then a civic engagement group, which there is a directory of different ones you could reach out to later in the guide. So that's another thing where a lot of civic engagement groups are already nonpartisan and already like have all this background information that maybe they could bring in a fun way or like hand out resources and stuff like that. And then National Voter Registration Day, I wanted to talk about that as well. That's they're a civic group, but they encourage a specific National Voter Registration Day, and I believe it's in September or October, where it's so many like colleges and libraries and groups around the country host voter registration drives and give out all that information on a specific day. And so it links to that if someone wants to look at that. And then I also put the deadline for when to register as a partner in the timeline. but that's a great resource. They give you all the resources you need. They'll guide you through it, give you all the information. So that's a great thing for libraries to do as well. I know a
Yep.
lot of our Nebraska public libraries already do that, looking at who
Mhm.
worked on it last year. But that's another thing with lots of free resources.
It's a great day to get people's attention. Yeah, and I just looked it up. It is in 2025. It is September 16th
Thank you. Yeah.
is National Voter Registration Day. So yeah,
And
start planning your programming now.
yeah, you can be a partner starting in May through late August, and they'll send you posters, materials, everything. And then for more programming, I have specific civic engagement programming for young people. Um, so kind of just more like with babies and stuff, they're not going to be like, oh, I'm so excited to meet my local city candidate, you know? So kind of like conversation kits that OPL has are a good example. And there's other examples for what you can do for young people. And then also right here, maybe if you're kind of wondering like why should I include civic engagement outreach in my library's programming, I have lots of different reasons for why it helps not just the library but the patrons as well. Especially when we're seeing voter suppression in Nebraska, but also political, I guess, maybe jabs at libraries, how like equipping your community to be civically engaged especially can help your library. Um, this is a really cool nerdy library website too, but everylibrary.org, or it doesn't want to work
What?
right now. Everylibrary.org, it's it tells
Mm.
you like kind of what's on the ballot for libraries and how you can support libraries through civic engagement. I like that one. I like that website a lot. It's pretty cool.
Yes,
But
we yeah, every library is a great resource for libraries. They have they're a nonprofit. They help libraries who are having actual items on their ballots, and they've gone into communities all over the country to help them just get the word out more and to do the kind of it's similar to what this guide does, but for people, especially in small libraries or any size libraries who just don't have the knowledge of how to deal with the political climate and how to, how do I make sure that my bond levy gets passed, or how do I make sure that this anti-library legislation doesn't get passed. Um, so they're a great resource for libraries. If anyone is having an issue in their community with that kind of thing, you can reach out to them and they will can help you with that as well. But they also just do big promotions about anything in general um, that's going on library related.
yeah. And when we talk about libraries and civic engagement, like they go together in the mission, but you're also getting your community to maybe care about libraries more and know how to fight back against when libraries are being suppressed or intellectual freedoms being suppressed.
Right, right.
And then now we have the connecting with community groups and resources part. So I know Mike and Jan kind of already gave their spiel for League of Women Voters and Civic Nebraska, but I just want to emphasize like the League of Women Voter Guides are so good. They're nonpartisan. They'll bring them to your library for free. Like at, at the Omaha Public Library, they go like that. Like people really want them and really trust them. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's just a great resource that's already updated with local races and presidential races too. And of course, Civic Nebraska, just really awesome, great for collaboration. And yeah, there's also a bunch of other organizations too that someone could reach out to if they're interested in having that collaboration in their library. Any questions so far?
We do have a question. You've been talking a lot about nonpartisan and how all these resources are that, and that's what's very important, I think, especially for libraries. But um, how do you deal, and this may be something, I don't know if you know this, Fiona, or if anyone else has had to deal with patrons who come in and want to speak at you about a particular person or a person's side and not be, your patrons are not necessarily going to come in and be nonpartisan. How do you deal with community members coming in and not being so even-handed and nice about these kind of controversial situations in libraries? I don't know
Are
if
you asking
Bethany.
about if someone's coming in with a question or if they're coming in to
Well, I
maybe?
mean, you're putting out things about voter registration and just the general things that don't take a particular side, and someone comes in and wants you to take a side. Well, don't you think that we should be not supporting this one or only supporting this one? That might be maybe a Bethany question if that's something that librarians know how to deal with.
Bethany answer
Yeah,
that, I think.
this is something that we do face often. And I think that, and I have staff that I work on this with, but it's hard because it's hard when it's something that goes against your personal beliefs. It's hard when it's something that goes with your personal beliefs. I think a lot of it is just, being very transparent that, like for me, I am a city worker. I cannot make a stance right now in this moment. I would really appreciate it if you're not saying things that might make other people feel unwelcome or uncomfortable in the space, things like that. And then at OPL, we have a really great code of conduct too that we can refer to ask people.
Policies.
Yeah,
Have a policy for everything that you can
yeah,
go back to. Yeah.
exactly. But it's hard. It's really hard.
Thanks.
In the guide, at least, there is a part that talks about how to be nonpartisan when you're implementing this programming.
Great.
Obviously, that doesn't impact maybe the concerns that patrons come up with, but we will get to that part in a second if that helps at all. Okay,
Okay.
let's
Yeah, go
continue
ahead.
on. And then these are expansion ideas, like if you want to go above and beyond. This is a voter registration kiosk. When I went to the Nashville Public Library last year, they had one of these in there where it's just a computer that they dedicate to online voter registration.
Nice.
So their League of Women Voters of Tennessee helped them with this. And it was a really cool public library anyway, but they had like a history of different groups earning the right to vote or not earning, like getting the right to vote. And so this was in their like historical part of the library. And then ballot drop boxes. I put a list of all of the ones that I could find in Nebraska, like all the libraries that already have this being offered. But if that's something your library is interested in, especially for maybe a smaller library or more rural library where patrons can already come to the library to get their information about voting and then drop off their early mail and ballot there too. That's something you'd have to talk to your county commission officer or commission office about. And then
Yeah, I
there's
love
also
those. Those are so convenient. I don't know if this is a good or bad thing to say. I haven't gone on any election day to vote in as far as I can remember. I do the mail me the ballot. I'll fill it out and drop it off when I have the time. So I get my vote in like weeks beforehand, and I'm like, good, it's done. I don't have to worry
yeah,
about that day and getting in waiting line or whatever. So I love those. Yeah.
that will be me next year, but I'm excited to vote for the
Yeah.
first time at the polls on April 1st.
Nice.
Yeah, or like mail-in ballots, there's information in there about that too, and that's a great resource, especially like depending on kind of your patrons' needs and stuff like that. Then this is more information about groups who have been underrepresented or historically barred from voting, or even now, like talking about how, um, especially people who've had a felony, like even just this last election cycle, that was kind of up in the air and really confusing for that group because some people were saying that um, people with felonies couldn't vote, but some people were saying they could. So there's information about historical voter suppression and then current voter suppression, and then kind of things to keep in mind in your programming if you know that you're serving a community who hasn't always, like, who has faced voter suppression. So um, that's important stuff to implement too and kind of recognize which communities you're serving in your patrons. And there's more information right there too if you work at a rural library or a library on a reservation as well. And then extra resources. Here's resources from the American Library Association and other library associations as well. Just if you need to find more information after this guide. And then here's where we get to being nonpartisan and civic engagement. So here's some tips, especially like providing those multiple perspectives, focusing more on like registering to vote, not like register to vote and vote for this person, and then incorporating your community's perspectives as well. I hope that kind of answers that person's question about that as well. And they can always email me or Miss Bethany if they have more questions. And then
I
this
think
part,
that making it personal to your community is I think would help with that too. Saying, here is the issues that are we're having in our community, and your vote will affect that.
yeah,
Whichever way you vote, whoever you choose, these are the kind of things that voting what it has to do with. Yeah.
because that's what this guide is trying to do. Is it's not trying to empower just some people to vote. It's trying to empower everyone to be able to vote,
As many people as
especially
possible.
with
Yeah.
the challenges we're seeing to getting to the polls right now. And then here's the last page. It talks about supporting your library staff when you're doing this civic engagement work, especially with current political climates. I mean, this can be very hard work, and usually is. And so it talks about making sure that like your library staff already know this information too. Like, don't put them out there already confused. That's why the background civic engagement is part of the guide, is so librarians can feel prepared and knowledgeable about all this stuff before. And then like looking at the programming, don't just make it an add-on last minute if you can. Like try to incorporate it, say like, oh, we need some programming for September. Why don't we do National Voter Registration Day? And then just really communicating with the staff and making sure that in doing this work, they're not being burnt out and that tasks are being delegated correctly. That kind of, there's a paragraph here about self-care and community care and civic engagement. And then also kind of what we talked about before, just tying all this back to how it helps your library. And it does help your library. It helps the community around your library, but it's helping people become informed voters who will hopefully then vote in a way that supports their library.
And community engagement, it's just civic engagement, is something that we try to push for our libraries to do as often as possible. Looking at what's the community, your needs in your community, and showing that the library is not just a place to go and check out a book or go to drop your kids for story time, but the library cares about the community too. And is doing things that supports the community, not just sitting there waiting for you to come to it to just do some. Yeah.
That's the end of the guide. Does anyone have any questions about it or comments or anything?
So yeah, does anybody have any other questions you want to ask? I've been pulling them from the chat. Type in and let us know if you have anything else you want to ask, any other parts you want to see of the guide in more detail. I think this is an amazing resource that you did. I mean, the amount of work that went into this, I'm so impressed. And I think it's going to be a great resource for our libraries, and hopefully getting more and more Nebraskans to vote. And even if you're not from Nebraska, this is a basis that you could use to create one in your community or in your state. A lot of this is very basic information that anyone in the country could use. You just got to find the local your local league of women voters or your local civic whatever, as opposed to Civic Nebraska, and get them connected and into it. We have a fantastic presentation and resource. Thank you from Amy at Omaha Public, Amy Mather. She's here. Yeah, I think this is great. Does anybody want to ask anything else? Did you want to show where we have this on our the Library Commission website? You said, I see you
Yes.
have that up there, the website selected by librarians. Yeah. Yes, this is Nebraska Access, which is a database, which is where the Nebraska Library Commission provides databases for all Nebraska citizens to use. It is funded by money that we get from the Nebraska State Legislature. So you can get these the actual wording of the statute is it's Nebraska databases for all Nebraska citizens. But you do need a password to get into the databases part. I just want to explain that while you're showing this. Contact your local public school or academic library, and they will have your password for where you're at. But our librarians here at the Library Commission do curate websites specifically to help librarians answer all sorts of questions that libraries might have.
Yes. So you don't need a password for my resource at all because it's in the websites part of it. So you go to Nebraska Access and you go to the websites that they've been curated, websites selected by librarians, and you go to government and law, and then elections and politics. And then my guide is right there, and so many other important resources too.
And there's the League of Women Voters in Nebraska. Yeah, all sorts of. As of course, yes, the nonpartisan everything here. As a state agency, we just put out here's all the things that could possibly help you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if you search the title too in Google, I think it's in the
It should
first
come up.
page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We put it on our. It was just. I was just looking at the emails when we did this. It was just at the end of February when you reached out to us. So there's that day. Oh, February 28th. So it's been on our website since February 28th. So it just depends on how long it takes Google to do its, crawling. But it should be out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And if you for some reason can't find it, my email is, well, I guess my email's on there, but it's ffb3013@gmail.com. So you can email me and I'll send you a copy if for some reason you can't get to it or anything.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I don't see any other last minute desperate questions coming in. No, anybody? I can't see when they're typing, so I don't know if somebody's typing something until it pops up. But I think we'll wrap things up. Anybody have any last words before I do my end of show wrap up for today? This is a great resource, Fiona. I think, as I said, it did a great job, and I think lots of libraries and Nebraska citizens are really going to benefit from it. Absolutely.
Thank you. And thank you for your time today as well.
All right. I am going to, let's see, do I have my screen up here? Yes. I am going to pull presenter control back to my screen. If I can find the, there we go. Yes. Share. There we go. All right, so this is the session page for today's show, where we also do have a link directly to that will just pop open the PDF automatically of the guide. So if you are on the show page here, you will get that. I was able to get every library's website open that you had mentioned earlier, Fiona. I don't know why, I don't have good security in mine, but yeah, everylibrary.org. So if you do want to reach out to them and see what they are doing to help libraries, their website is out there. So today's show, as I said, is recorded and it will be on our archive page. If you use whatever is your search engine of choice and type in our show name, NCompass Live, you'll come up with our main page where we have our upcoming shows here, but then underneath there we have a link to our archives. And today's show will be at the top of the list here, most recent one's at the top. We'll have a link to the recording that will be on our YouTube channel and a link to Fiona's slides too, if you want to take a look at those. Everyone who attended today's show and registered for today's show will both get an email directly from me when I push it out onto our mailing list. We also have social media. We have a Facebook page for NCompass Live. If you'd like to use Facebook, give us a like. We hear reminders about logging in for today's show, little meet the presenter posts, and then when recordings are available, we also post on here. So if you follow us there, or our hashtag, we use the hashtag, a little abbreviation of our show name, NComp Live, to post on here and on the Library Commission's other social media. We have Instagram, as the Library Commission has Instagram and its own pages as well. You can also search our show archives if you want to see if we've done a show on a particular topic you may be interested in. You can search the full show archives or just most recent 12 months if you want something that's just very current. But if you do search our show, and I'm not going to scroll all the way down here, but I'm just going to show you. These are our shows going back to when NCompass Live first premiered, which was in January 2009. I think that puts it at 17 years we're in right now. So pay attention to the original broadcast date of anything you do watch. Many shows will be fine to watch. They'll stand the test of time, still be good resources, but some things will become old and outdated. Resources or services may have changed drastically since we first had the show, did the show. People might not work at the same library or institution where they presented for us, but just pay attention to that. But this is something that libraries do, keep things for historical purposes. And as long as we have a place to host all our shows, which right now is the Library Commission's YouTube channel, we will keep all of our shows up there for you to watch. So that wraps it up for today. Thank you everyone for being here with us this morning. Thank you, Fiona, Bethany, Mike, and Jan for being here. This is awesome. We made it through the whole hour with nobody losing internet or power. Yay. Take that, Blizzard, Nebraska blizzards. We can do it. So that wraps up today's show. Next week, we will be talking about creating connection in library events. We have another guest speaker, Nick Shimon, who's from North Liberty, Iowa Library. We'll be talking about that in something that he's doing in his library. I'll also want to bring attention to this. Some of you who know our show and watch regularly, usually the last Wednesday of every month is Pretty Sweet Tech, which is when Amanda Sweet, our technology innovation librarian, comes on the show and does a presentation. However, she's not available the last Wednesday of this month because she's going to be next week at the Computers and Libraries Conference. So we are skipping hers for this month, March, but she'll be back in April to talk about what she saw and learned at Computers and Libraries 2025. So she gets a month off. She'll be back next month for those of you who are looking for that. We'll have Nick with us next week. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you all, and hopefully we'll see you all on a future episode of NCompass Live. Bye-bye. Stay safe. Stay warm.